The Philadelphia Church of God presents the Trumpet Daily.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Trumpet Daily. We recently spent 2 weeks in Israel taping segments for the Trumpet Daily, meeting with colleagues and friends, and visiting archaeological excavations. Over the next several weeks, we'll be airing a number of programs that were taped on location all over Israel, on the Mediterranean coast, from the ancient remains of Caesarea, and from the top of Mount Carmel, where the prophet Elijah lived during the days of ancient Israel. We'll be coming to you from the ancient ruins of Tel Dan, where the city of Dan was situated on the northern border of biblical Israel. We also film from the little town of Metula, which pushes right up against Israel's border with Lebanon. From there we move to the Sea of Galilee, walking in some of the same hills and valleys that Jesus Christ traversed. Our second week in Israel centered around the city of Jerusalem, although we did break away for one afternoon to record segments from En Gedi, where a young David fled from the wrath of King Saul, and from the shores of the Dead Sea for a program about ancient Sodom and Gomorrah. In Jerusalem, we filmed from the Mount of Olives, in front of the Jaffa Gate leading into the Old City, and from the neighborhood of Rehavia, on a hill overlooking the Knesset in the background. We also taped segments in front of the Solomonic Wall at the Jerusalem Archaeological Park, and also at the Liberty Bell Park, and in front of Jerusalem's International Cultural Center for Youth. The first clip that we'll show you today is from Caesarea, a city that is featured prominently in the early development of the True Christian Church. After that, we'll show you a few clips that we posted on our YouTube channel while we were traveling. And if you haven't visited the YouTube channel yet, you need to check that out the next time that you go online. I think we ended up posting about 10 videos to the channel while we were traveling. And these were short videos that we produced in addition to our daily television programs, the 30-minute programs that we recorded. Now, added to that, we also provided some fairly detailed updates of our journey on our Twitter pages. So if you want to get plenty of news and notes about the Trumpet Daily, you can follow the Twitter feeds either at Stephen Flurry or at the Trumpet Daily. Now you can get all of these pages, the Twitter feed, the YouTube channel, or the iTunes page where you can download the podcast of this program by simply visiting thetrumpetdaily.com. That's thetrumpetdaily.com. All right, now after the various clips that we'll show you from our travels, we'll also include a short excerpt from our fascinating interview with Dr. Eilat Mazar, who's been making some incredible discoveries for the world of archaeology in her excavations in and around the city of David. The entirety of that interview, by the way, will be converted into its own Trumpet Daily program sometime in the next week or two. Now, after the excerpt with Dr. Mazar, we'll conclude today's program by including another excerpt from a segment we taped around Jerusalem about Herbert W. Armstrong's work in Israel and the relationship that he maintained with many of Israel's most influential leaders. Mr. Armstrong was, as this little booklet suggests, a warm friend of Israel. If you jot down the phone number on your screen and call after today's program, we'll send you a free copy of this brand new booklet, never before offered on television. This little booklet is loaded with pictures of Mr. Armstrong's meetings and activities in and around Jerusalem. And even those of you who are familiar with Mr. Armstrong's work, I think will be surprised at just how extensive his involvement was in Israel. So we'll put the phone number up again during the last segment of today's program so that you can order your copy of A Warm Friend of Israel. Or if you'd like to take a look at it online, just go to thetrumpetdaily.com. All right, with that, we'll move into some of the highlights of our recent trip to Israel. Enjoy. Even today, when you walk through the ruins of what used to be the Roman city of Caesarea, you can sense that during the days of Jesus Christ and the first century church, this city must have been one of the most splendid and modern harbor towns in all the world. Caesarea is situated on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, about halfway between the Israeli cities of Tel Aviv and Haifa. Toward the end of the first century BC, Herod the Great rebuilt this city over the course of 12 years and then changed the name to Caesarea in honor of Augustus Caesar. It then became the capital city of the Roman province that included Jerusalem, which is about 60 miles southeast of here. According to the Jewish historian Josephus, Herod erected many edifices with great diligence throughout this city. The greatest of these was the artificial harbor he built right into the sea. He designed this innovative harbor because ships arriving at smaller ports near Caesarea couldn't dock along the shoreline because of the waves and the underwater drifts of sand that would push up against the shoreline. And so, Herod decided to build an artificial harbor by lowering these massive stone slabs into the sea in order to break the waves and to stand as a barrier against the rolling sands. Some of these huge stones were 50 feet wide. Josephus said that the harbor was one of the biggest in the Mediterranean. Throughout the city, there were also a great number of arches where the mariners dwelt, Josephus wrote. Now there were edifices all along the circular haven made of the finest stone with a certain elevation whereon was erected a temple that was seen a great way off by those that were sailing for the haven, and had it two statues, the one of Rome and the other of Caesar. That temple that Josephus spoke of would have been located right behind me, there next to the shoreline. Finally, Josephus continued, Herod also built therein a theater of stone, and on the south quarter, behind the port, an amphitheater also, capable of holding a vast number of men, and conveniently situated for a prospect to the sea. You got this beautiful view of the sea, in other words. Now, for many centuries, when this ancient city remained hidden from world view, many scholars doubted the claims of Josephus, saying he got it all wrong, or that he made these wild exaggerations. But that was before archaeologists started raising the ruins of this ancient city for all to see. The city streets, the aqueducts and the baths, the public and private dwelling places, the statues and religious shrines, the palace, the temple, and of course, the giant artificial breakwater that was built right into the sea.
The Trumpet Daily Update from Jerusalem.
Hello everyone, we're back on the YouTube channel, and behind me is the Dead Sea, and all around me is a lot of heat. It's really hot today, about 110, 115 degrees. We've spent some time in Jerusalem doing some filming while we were up there. We'll have a clip from that in just a second, but just one note that I didn't bring out on the little recording there is that the iPad, some of the equipment that we use, got so hot that it just stopped and said the temperature was too hot. So we've had to work through a few little tricks here and there to keep everything working smoothly. And hopefully when we film these segments on TV, the little beads of moisture all over my face won't be so noticeable that it's a big distraction. In any event, we've pushed our way through it. I think we've produced some pretty good segments here. This location, for as hot as it is and for as much as I wouldn't want to just hang out here on a day like today, it does provide a really amazing backdrop once again for the program. You can see the Dead Sea behind, but also really there's signs everywhere that says danger, don't go down here because there's sinkholes. And you can see some sinkholes actually back in the distance there. The whole area is still sinking. In fact, the Dead Sea is shrinking just because there's no fresh water that comes into it, and these shorelines, you can imagine, probably had water that came up quite a bit farther than they do right now. So it's a desolate, lifeless, barren area, and all of that, I think, is very symbolic, not only of what's happening to this world, but it serves as a lesson because of what happened in this whole region when God scorched the earth, basically, and then threw brimstone on top of it, as we know from Genesis 18 and 19 in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. So it's been a good active day once again, and we'll look forward to keeping you posted through the course of this week if we have opportunity. So we'll cut away now to another little clip that we recorded overlooking the old city in Jerusalem. Behind me you can see what's commonly assumed to be the Temple Mount platform, in the middle of which are the two famous Muslim mosques. And just a few comments that I'll say here about this location, which, as you can see, is ideal for capturing a dramatic backdrop of what most people associate with Jerusalem today, this gold dome in particular. And I think it was back in 1995, we had come here the first year in 94, and we found a location south of the city that was pretty good. It wasn't the greatest, but we tried to get up as high as we could, and we tried to find a fairly secluded area just for privacy's sake, and ended up taping there, and they came out okay. And then I think the next year that we came, back in 1995, it's somewhere around there, that we did some more exploring, and we traveled through the hills of East Jerusalem here, and just happened to stumble upon this park that kind of lines or climbs up the Mount of Olives. And there's some sites to our south, and I think maybe even to the north, but the real big one, the real big tourist stop, is to our south, where they take all the buses and such, and people empty off. There's this gorgeous platform there where they can get their pictures and such. But meanwhile, there's this park here which has this winding path that works its way from near at the bottom all the way up to the top of this mount. And we're able to come up here, and every time that we've come here, we've maybe passed a few people. It just is hardly ever used. When we were walking up today, we passed about 8 or 10 people that were having some kind of service up there, and they walked down in their nice clothes with their Bibles in hand and so on. They passed by, and since that time, we've taped a segment here. We've been here quite a while before and after, and nothing, no traffic or anything. So every time we come to Jerusalem with the TV camera, we remember this spot with great affection, because we've taped here numerous times over the years. We haven't come to Jerusalem as much in the last decade or so, but when we did a few years ago to resume some taping with the Key of David, we came right to the same location. 10 whatever years had gone by, and it was the same as it was back in the mid-90s. So hopefully while we're here for these 2 weeks, we can get 2 or 3 programs taped from this location with this backdrop behind me serving as the scenery. It's been a great day so far. We've still got a fair bit of daylight left, as you can see. Last night we had a wonderful dinner with Dr. Mazar and a couple of her associates and all of us that were over here and spending the time with her. Before we went out to the meal with her, we met at her office in the Hebrew University, and then had a wonderful meal as well, as I said. And then after that, we got her to approve of us being able to come down here this morning. She was gracious enough to let us in. Right now, the site, at least down by the Royal Structure where we taped our interview with her 2 days ago, is still roped off, and they don't let anyone in because it's not quite finished with the stairs and so on that they're building for the tourists. But they do let in some groups. We saw one group come in as we were finishing up our filming this morning, coming down with an archaeologist or a tour guide of some kind, who then tried to shoo us away because I think he knew it was not officially opened yet. In any event, before it really became crowded with lots of tourists, we were able to tape 2 programs right down there next to Solomon's walls. One of them, we talked primarily just about Solomon and the size and the scope of his kingdom, and we led into it with the establishment of the kingdom there with King David, and then how the northward expansion of the kingdom continued with all of these various construction projects of Solomon's. Of course, the most important or significant of them being the construction of the first temple. And then after that, we spent quite a lot of time in the second filming on King David and the establishment of the monarchy here in Israel, and how that was laying the foundation for Jesus Christ's very throne to be set up and to be established, as Mr. Armstrong said, on this very spot that we've been excavating, this very spot that the ambassadors before us were helping Dr. Benjamin Mazar clean off, and that we've come along and continued right after that. I think one couple of interesting points, I guess, that I can leave you with that stood out to me is really how so much of what Mr. Armstrong did, as we know, for our work, it prepared the way, it laid the groundwork for all that we are about and all that we represent. And at dinner last night, Dr. Mazar was saying much the same thing about her grandfather, and how that what he did in this massive excavation that went on for 10 years here at the southern Temple Mount area, how that really there wasn't a lot found during that huge excavation that went on for 10 years. Not a lot found from the first temple period, I mean, and how that Dr. Eilat Mazar has come along after all of that and has done some remarkable work and has shown a lot of stones from David's and from Solomon's era. So it's exciting to think about those similarities there, and that how Mr. Armstrong, who had so much more to contribute in the way of funds and students than we ever have had to this point, and yet we've come along here at the last, and look at what some of our students have been involved in and what this work has been able to participate in. It's pretty exciting to think about what God has done, what He's raised up, and the fact that we have a small part to play in assisting Him in that work. So that was a pretty exciting aspect, I think, of the programs that we taped this morning. And as we leave here tomorrow night, of course, it'll be sad to depart, but we're excited to get back home and to begin work on a lot of these places, these episodes that we filmed, and to start cutting in footage and doing the editing and so on, so that we can get all of this out on television or on the Trumpet Daily site just as soon as we possibly can. So hopefully you'll enjoy these last few updates that we have, and a special treat that we're going to be posting over the weekend as well, that takes some excerpts from that interview that we had with Dr. Mazar the other night, and gives it to you for your viewing benefit. So thank you for joining us, not just for this episode, but for all the updates. We've had lots of views on the YouTube channel for these various updates. We thank you for your support and for your encouragement, and we'll look forward to seeing you, some of you at least, when we get back home. All right, we're here today at the Jerusalem Archaeological Park, just south of the Temple Mount, where the Temple Mount excavations took place beginning in 1968, I believe it was. We're here today with Dr. Eilat Mazar, who's just finished a significant project here in the royal structure, as she calls it. And to begin with, Dr. Mazar, if you could explain, just summarize some of the history of all of the excavations that have taken place here at the Temple Mount, beginning with your grandfather, Benjamin Mazar, back in 1968.
Well, it's a long story, as you said, starting in 1967, when the excavation started at the foot of the Temple Mount enclosure walls, and revealing of very large, interesting complexes, constructions, from all periods of Jerusalem, and concentrating in following history backwards. And only in the very last years of their excavations, which lasted 10 years, they came at the very edge of the excavations area, and finally they found remains from first temple period. That was 3,000 years of history of Jerusalem. And very luckily, the remains here are so nicely preserved, as you can see around us, which is sometimes 5 to 6 meter height of preservation. And the reason is that in this area, the bedrock, the natural bedrock of the hill is very steep, falling down towards the Kidron Valley. And therefore, the preservation is so good, and they had the chance to reveal at the time of their excavations already remains from that period, the destruction of Jerusalem at 586 BCE. The pottery crushed in an immense fire of the destruction. This was the last year of their excavations, so they didn't had enough at that time after so many years of excavations. So
that was in 1978?
78,
okay.
Concluding the excavations then.
So your grandfather worked in this area for 10 years, and this, we should also point out, was where the ambassadors helped him for those 10 years, every summer.
The ambassadors worked all over, and the contributions of the ambassadors in the Temple Mount excavations is unbelievable. So, we're coming every summer, sometimes for 2 months, and working. There were dozens of students coming to the excavations. This was a most wonderful, fantastic relationship and getting together and reveal ancient Jerusalem.
And how would you just as an aside, how would you characterize your grandfather's relationship with Herbert Armstrong's?
This was wonderful friendship. They became, at the beginning, I mean, they got to know each other, and Mr. Armstrong at the time showed that he wanted to be involved and to contribute, but they became best friends. They were walking around the excavations, hugged together. This was unbelievable. And my grandfather was waiting for Mr. Armstrong's visit. And it became a very strong, unbelievable, fantastic friendship. I think that we are making a best effort, best use out of this friendship, because they kind of led us into it.
Yeah.
So it continues.
We
They established something that continues, really.
So you started digging when you were 11 years old, along with your grandfather, and that's how you came to get to know some of the ambassadors as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I was a child, and it was like people coming from outworld, out of Jerusalem.
Intriguing.
I never met. This was fantastic, speaking English and all kinds of languages, and they were so nice even today. I mean, that didn't change, and we were intrigued by their kindness, by their enthusiasm.
When the Temple Mount excavations concluded in 1976, Mr. Armstrong made sure the iron bridge between Pasadena and Jerusalem remained strong. From 1980 through the summer of 1985, he dispatched ambassador students to support excavations led by Dr. Yigal Shiloh, this time at the City of David, just a little ways south of the southern wall of the Temple Mount. Like Mazar, Dr. Shiloh embraced the ambassadors and stated that he would use ambassador students exclusively if he could. "We built the bridge," Mr. Armstrong wrote in November 1980, "and it's still standing, and we're still traveling back and forth on it." In addition to the support of archaeology, the Iron Bridge Partnership had a second goal: to bring the children of Jerusalem, Jew, Muslim, and others, together to learn the way of peace. To further that goal, Mr. Armstrong's Ambassador International Cultural Foundation supported Jerusalem's International Cultural Center for Youth, the ICCY, which is where we are at the moment. The concept of the ICCY had been born in the mind of Moshe Cole, the one who coined the Iron Bridge phrase, after the War of Independence in 1948 and 1949. And it was founded in the spring of 1960, along with the support of U.S. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. Mr. Armstrong supported the work of the ICCY and the dream of seeing children of all nations and ethnicities living and playing and growing together in the way of peace. The ICCY named this very square at the entrance of its building in Jerusalem the Herbert W. Armstrong Square. And so today, visitors to this upscale German colony can still see the stone plaque at the edge of the square. Not long after Mr. Armstrong established his friendship, his relationship with the ICCY, and in connection with the same dream of peace for the children of Jerusalem and the world, Mr. Armstrong responded to a request from Jerusalem Mayor Teddy Kollek, who hoped to develop a beautiful park here in downtown Jerusalem. The Ambassador Foundation helped fund the construction of the Liberty Bell Park, specifically the children's playground at its northern entrance just a little ways ahead of us. So this is the children's playground at the north end of the Liberty Bell Park here in Jerusalem. And in 1997, we contacted the Jerusalem Foundation to ask about why the plaque that had been here for a number of years was somehow removed. We were here during that time for some television taping as we were traveling through Israel. And one of our stops, we came to this park and we looked all over the park knowing what Mr. Armstrong had written about this plaque that had been written in his honor. And we couldn't find it. We contacted them in 1997 and they told us that the park had undergone some renovations and that they would have to make a new one. And when they made the new one, we were pleasantly surprised. We were just hoping to get Mr. Armstrong's name reinserted here at the children's playground. But as it happens, the new inscription that they put together in Hebrew and in English reads as follows. It says here, "A children's playground, a gift of the Philadelphia Foundation, Herbert W. Armstrong, founder, Gerald R. Fleury, president." So they saw fit to make this connection then between our work and Mr. Armstrong's. But going back to Mr. Armstrong and the work that he did all of those years after 1968, even to this day, we see his name stamped on two great symbols of hope for the future of the children of Jerusalem. Mr. Armstrong's contributions did not go unnoticed by those who sat in the gates of Jerusalem, the leaders who worked from this building behind me. In fact, following his first meeting in the Knesset in 1968 to his death in 1986, Mr. Armstrong was welcomed by every prime minister and president Israel had for the rest of his life, including Prime Ministers Golda Meir, Yitzhak Rabin, Menachem Begin, and Shimon Peres. Israeli leaders valued the work, the counsel, and the friendship of Herbert Armstrong. Today, though those whom Mr. Armstrong entrusted with the Ambassador Foundation, with Ambassador College, the Plain Truth Magazine, the Worldwide Church of God, though they've rejected his legacy and closed all the humanitarian and cultural activities down, the Armstrong International Cultural Foundation is working to keep that work alive. We have continued to support the Liberty Bell Park, for example. We've formed a strong bond with Benjamin Mazar's granddaughter, Dr. Eilat Mazar. We've sent several groups of students from Herbert W. Armstrong College to help with the exciting archaeological excavations that she's undertaking in Jerusalem. The foundation chairman, my father, Gerald Fleury, and his staff regularly travel to Jerusalem, as you can see from this presentation, to personally investigate progress on the foundation's activities in the Eternal City. In several other ways, from performing arts to youth camps to publishing to broadcasting to participation in projects in the Holy Land, the Armstrong Foundation and the Philadelphia Church of God continue to raise up the legacy of a remarkable man, an unofficial ambassador for world peace, a great educator, a close acquaintance of world leaders, and a warm friend to Israel. This is Stephen Fleury concluding today's presentation from the Liberty Bell Park in Jerusalem.